Eleanor Whitmore, 68, a widow who poured nearly 5 decades into Hazelbrook Orchards, a Pennsylvania apple farm where every tree tells a story of love and labor. My arthritic hands still carry the memory of kneading sourdough and pruning branches, alongside Richard, my husband since 1981, as we built a life orchard, home and family, rooted in the soil of our dreams. 3 weeks ago, I buried him, the weight of his absence heavier than the harvest we shared. The day after his funeral, as I walked the familiar rows of apple trees, a stark truth struck like a frost. The family I thought we'd nurtured, the bonds we'd tended as carefully as our orchard, might not hold together without him. In the quiet of Hazelbrook, where the scent of ripe apples and earth once felt like stability, I faced a raw awakening. The orchard, with its gnarled branches and steady rows, stands as a testament to the life we built. But my fear that our family might unravel reveals a deeper truth. Building doesn't guarantee belonging. Richard's laughter, his steady hand guiding ours, was the glue, and now without him I see cracks I hadn't noticed before. My hands, worn from years of labor, still know the work, but my heart questions its place. This isn't just my story. It's a universal echo for anyone who's poured their soul into a legacy, only to face its fragility and loss. Standing among the trees, in beginning a journey to redefine my place, to learn that family isn't just built, it's chosen, sustained, and fought for, even when the roots feel shaken. For 14 months, pancreatic cancer stole Richard's vitality, his farmer's resilience fading under the haze of morphine, leaving a shadow of the man who once pruned Hazelbrook Orchard's apple trees beside me. He begged me to keep his illness from our children, Darren and Samantha, wanting to shield them from grief's crushing weight, and I honoured his wish, though it carved a lonely chasm in my heart. Their distance spoke louder than words. Darren's rare visits from his high-flying Boston finance world, Samantha's endless wellness ventures, bankrolled by Richard's hard-earned savings. I swallowed the truth, hoping his passing would pull them back to Hazelbrook, to the orchard's rows and memories of family dinners steeped in love's labour. But at the funeral my dream shattered. I saw strangers, not mourners, their eyes scanning the orchard not for loss but for assets, land, equipment, legacy to be carved up. My heart sank, the weight of their detachment heavier than Richard's absence. The orchard, once a symbol of our unity, stood silent, its roots no longer binding them to us. Darren's clipped condolences, Samantha's distracted glances, they weren't grieving, they were calculating, their indifference a betrayal of the life we'd built together. For years it tended our family like I tended these trees, pruning, nurturing, believing love would hold us fast. But their cold presence revealed a truth. Love doesn't guarantee connection, and roots, untended, wither. This isn't just my story. It's a warning for anyone who's poured their soul into a legacy, only to see it reduced to collateral by those meant to cherish it. In the quiet of Hazelbrook, amidst the gnarled branches we once tended, am beginning to redefine family not as what was built, but as what endures through care, not calculation. My journey, sparked by their detachment, is a universal call to recognize that even the deepest love can't force roots to grow where they've been neglected. The night after Richard's funeral, I sat alone at our worn kitchen table in Hazelbrook Orchards, the wood scarred from decades of shared meals, proposing we sort his belongings together, a quiet plea to weave our grief into something shared. But Darren and Samantha had other plans, their absence louder than the silence that filled the Pennsylvania farmhouse. Morning light spilled through the lace curtains we'd chosen together in '81. As I brewed Richard's simple black coffee, its aroma a tether to his memory, waiting for our children. They arrived not as mourners, but as strangers. Darren in a crisp blazer, Samantha's silk blouse pristine, more suited for a corporate deal than a grieving kitchen. "Mom, we've been talking," Darren said, his tone clipped, placing his mug with calculated precision. "It's time to settle the estate, the orchard, the house." "You can't manage alone," Samantha added, her voice polished, almost rehearsed, suggesting Sunnyvale Estates, a retirement home perfect for your age. Those words your age landed like a blade, cutting through my years of hauling apple crates, baking pies for market, and pruning trees through biting storms. My arthritic hands, still strong from decades of labour alongside Richard, tightened around my mug. It poured nearly 5 decades into this orchard, this home, this family, believing love would bind us. But their eyes weren't on memories, they were on assets, calculating the worth of land and legacy it built with sweat and heart. My offer to sort Richard's belongings, to hold our grief together, was crushed under their cold pragmatism, their suggestion of a retirement home, a dismissal of the woman who'd kept Hazelbrook thriving. This kitchen, once a haven of family dinners and laughter, became a battleground, the coffee a fading tether to Richard's, love now overshadowed by their greed. Their words weren't just a betrayal, they were an erasure of the life we'd built, reducing me to an obstacle in their plans. This isn't just my story, it's a warning for anyone who's poured their soul into a family, only to see it treated as collateral in grief's wake. Like rural families selling ancestral lands for quick profit, Darren and Samantha's haste to settle reveals a painful truth. Family ain't always who you build with, but who stays to remember. In the quiet of this table, facing their dismissal, confronting a new journey, not to reclaim their love, but to redefine my place, proving that legacy endures only with those who honour its roots. I cleared breakfast plates at our worn kitchen table, masking trembling hands as Darren slid a folder across the scarred wood, his voice cold with purpose. "Dad signed this last year, giving Melissa and me control," he claimed, revealing documents on his crisp corporate letterhead. Richard's signature unnervingly pristine, despite the morphine haze that clouded his final months. Samantha leaned in, her polished tone cutting sharper. "A developer's offering $7 million. The orchard's gone, suburbs are coming. You be secure." Their words sliced through me, not just dismissing me, but proposing to erase Hazelbrook orchards. Richard's legacy of harvest, community markets, and love's labour for a sterile sprawl of cul-de-sacs. My arthritic hands, still etched with decades of pruning and kneading, tightened as fury rose, a fire kindled by their audacity to dismantle what we'd built. "Show me the will," I demanded, my voice steady despite the storm raging within. Darren hesitated, nudging the papers closer, but I left them untouched, their inauthenticity screaming louder than his excuses. "Well, talk tomorrow," I said, knowing no discussion would come, not with those who saw our orchard as a paycheck, not a promise. Their plan wasn't its pragmatism. It was greed, a betrayal cloaked in concern, aiming to raise the rows of apple trees Richard and I had tended through storms and seasons for fleeting profit. The orchard wasn't just land, it was my heart, our life, a testament to love that their cold calculations couldn't fathom. This wasn't just a family fracture, it's a universal cry for anyone who's seen their legacy threatened by opportunists. Like Indigenous lands sold off by descendants for quick gain, Darren and Samantha's rush to cash in erased the roots Richard and I had nurtured. In the quiet of Hazelbrook, where the scent of apples still lingered, I wasn't delaying, I was preparing to fight, to protect the orchard that held our story. My stand, sparked by their betrayal, is a testament to the enduring power of love for a place, proving that a legacy outlives those who seek to profit from its loss. Sleepless in our old bed, the farmhouse creaking around me, the apple trees, whispers outside felt alien, their familiar hum overshadowed by the cold hearts of my children, Darren and Samantha. Morning brought Darren's sharp, imported coffee, its bitterness a mirror to their betrayal. As they stood downstairs, coats on, a packed suitcase, not mine waiting by the door. "We'll drive you to Sunnyvale," Samantha chirped, her voice bright but hollow, pushing a retirement home visit as if it were a gift. "Am not leaving," I said, pouring coffee, my arthritic joints aching not from age but from their dismissal of the life Richard and I built at Hazelbrook Orchards. Darren, impatient, snapped, "The paperwork's done. Developers close next week." I met his gaze, seeing not the boy who once chased bees through these fields, but a stranger eyeing profit over legacy. "This is my home," I countered, my voice steady, rooted like the trees outside. Upstairs, I grabbed my pills, then reached into a hidden panel behind the closet. Retrieving my passport and birth certificate proof of the woman I was before their greed. Behind Richard's flannel shirts, I pulled out a fireproof box, its contents a secret weapon, the orchard's original deed, still in my maiden name, securing 20 vital acres of Hazelbrook. My hands trembled, not with fear but with purpose, as I tucked the documents into my purse, its weight a quiet promise of defiance. Back downstairs, I let Samantha guide me, feigning defeat as they ushered me toward the car. "Ready?" Darren asked, his tone clipped, expectant. I nodded, hiding the resolve burning in my chest, my heart lighter with a secret plan to protect the orchard that held our love, our labor, our life. This wasn't just a moment of resistance. It was a stand for everything Richard and I had built, a refusal to let their cold pragmatism raise our legacy for a developer's paycheck. The farmhouse, with its creaking beams and apple-scented air, wasn't just a home, it was a fortress of memory. And that deed was my lifeline, my proof that Hazelbrook was mine to defend. Their betrayal, Darren's forged papers, Samantha's push for Sunnyvale, revealed a truth. Family isn't just who you build with, but who fights to preserve what matters. This story is a call to anyone whose legacy is threatened by greed, a reminder that home is worth fighting for. By concealing my power, I didn't just resist. I reclaimed my story, proving that love for a place outlives those who seek to profit from its loss. The drive wove past Hazelbrook's blooming orchard fields, their apple trees whispering memories of love and labor, past the school where Id volunteered, the library where Id read to wide-eyed children. But instead of heading to Sunnyvale Estates, Darren veered onto a desolate county road, the tires crunching over gravel as he stopped beside an empty, windswept field. "Get out, Mum," he said, his voice cold as the spring chill, devoid of the boy who once chased bees through our orchard. "The orchard's ours now. This is cleaner." Samantha's smile faltered, her eyes wide with shock, but she said nothing as Darren opened my door, leaving me with a small suitcase, my life reduced to a single bag. Their car sped off, dust swirling in its wake, the sting of their betrayal hanging heavy in the air. I stood firm, wind tugging at my coat, clutching the suitcase, not with fear but with a fire that burned brighter than their cruelty. In my purse, the deed to 20 acres Hazelbrook's heart, secured in my maiden name lay like a secret weapon, a shield they couldn't strip away. I wasn't broken, I was liberated, my resolve forged in the furnace of their greed, ready to fight for the home Richard and I had built through decades of sweat and love. This barren roadside wasn't my defeat, it was my battlefield, where their callous abandonment only strengthened my stand. Darren and Samantha thought they could erase me, claiming the orchard for their $7 million deal, but the deed in my purse promised power they couldn't touch. The trees, the farmhouse, the legacy, they were mine to defend, rooted deeper than their betrayal could reach. This isn't just my story. It's a rallying cry for anyone whose loyalty has been discarded for profit, whose legacy faces the axe of greed. Like communities clutching legal titles against developers, I stood tall, the deed my shield against their opportunism. The wind pulling at my coat wasn't a force to break me. It was a call to rise, to protect Hazelbrook's soul. Their betrayal, Darren's cold dismissal, Samantha's complicit silence, revealed a truth. Family isn't guaranteed by blood, but earned through those who honor shared roots. By standing firm in that empty field, I didn't just resist. I transformed abandonment into empowerment, proving that my home, my love, my legacy run deeper than their greed could ever uproot. I turned away from the gas station Darren pointed me toward, choosing instead the gravel road to Hazelbrook Orchards, each step sharpening my resolve despite the ache in my feet. In my purse, I carried my ID, passport, medication, and the deed to 20 acres secured in my maiden name before Richard and I married, a secret safeguard we'd kept from the world. Those acres held the orchard's lifeblood, its only water source vital for crops or any developer's dream. Darren and Samantha thought they'd outmaneuvered me. Their forged papers and $7 million deal a done fact. But they didn't know the land's true power, pulsing through those acres I still controlled. My children saw me as an old woman to be sidelined, but I carried a truth they couldn't uproot. After 2 hours, blisters burning with every step, I reached Miller's Gas and Grocery, a weathered haven where names still carried weight in this Pennsylvania corner. I sank onto a bench outside, suitcase at my side, looking like just another weary traveler to passers-by. But beneath the tired exterior, I held an unyielding truth, the deed, my sword securing Hazelbrook's heart. Ray Miller, a friend of 30 years, stepped out, his familiar presence a quiet anchor in the storm of betrayal. His weathered face softened as he saw me, a nod of recognition that grounded me, reminding me of the community that had always seen Richard and me for who we were. This trek wasn't just physical. It was a defiant march to reclaim my legacy, each painful step a rejection of my children's greed. The orchard, with its gnarled trees and apple-scented air, wasn't just land. It was the life Richard and I built, a love they sought to raise for profit. Their betrayal, Darren's cold dismissal, Samantha's complicit push for Sunnyvale, underestimated the power of those 20 acres, the lifeblood I held. This isn't just my standards, a universal cry for anyone whose legacy is threatened by opportunists, like stewards guarding ancestral lands against profiteers. At Miller's, under Ray's steady gaze, I wasn't broken. I was armed, the deed my shield against their schemes. By walking forward, blisters and all, I didn't just endure, I wielded the truth, proving my roots in Hazelbrook run deeper than their betrayal could ever reach. Ray Miller spotted me on the bench outside his gas and grocery, worry etching his weathered face as he took in my suitcase and weary frame. "Mrs. Whitmore, you okay?" he asked, his voice thick with concern. "Just resting," I replied. His mention of Richard's goodness, a quiet nod to our shared history at Hazelbrook Orchards. Stoking the fire of my resolve. "Need a phone?" he offered, guiding me past shelves of canned goods to his cluttered office, a haven of familiarity in Pennsylvania's heart. Inside, I dialed Harold Jennings, our trusted lawyer, who answered with shock. Darren presented a questionable will. "It doesn't match Richard's last update," he revealed, his voice tight with disbelief. "Meet me in an hour discreetly," I urged, my tone steady, fueled by the deed to 20 acres Hazelbrooks, lifeblood hidden in my purse. Ray handed me a prepaid phone and a bottle of water, waving off my attempt to pay. "Anything else, just say," he said, his kindness a quiet anchor that nearly broke my composure. I held firm, my blisters and aching joints no match for the fight rising within me, ready to defend the orchard Richard and I had poured 5 decades into. This wasn't just a call for help, it was a strategic strike. Leveraging the deed in my maiden name and allies, like Harold, to counter my children's betrayal. Darren and Samantha thought they'd outmaneuvered me with their forged papers and $7 million developer deal, but they underestimated the power of those acres, the water source that made Hazelbrook indispensable. Miller's wasn't just a grocery. It was my war room, the prepaid phone, my weapon. Ray's loyalty a reminder of the community that had always seen Richard and me for our love, not our lands. Profit. This isn't just my standards. A universal cry for anyone whose legacy faces exploitation, like rural stewards rallying neighbours against land grabs. The orchard, with its gnarled trees and apple-scented air, was more than property. It was my heart, Richard's dream, and our fight to keep it. By mobilizing from that cramped office, I didn't just endure, I struck back, proving Hazelbrook's roots run deeper than their greed could ever reach. I climbed the creaking stairs to Harold Jennings' office, nestled in a Victorian on Main Street, where he'd been our lawyer through 3 decades of Hazelbrook orchards. Triumphs and trials. Helen, his secretary, greeted me with wide-eyed concern, offering water, but I waved it off. My focus razor sharp as I stepped into Harold's office. His familiar sweater vest and steady gaze anchored me, though his shoulders bore the slight sag of age. "Eleanor, tell me everything," he urged, guiding me to worn leather chairs by a window overlooking Pennsylvania's quiet heart. I poured out the raw truth, the cold distance at Richard's funeral, Darren's dubious will with its suspiciously pristine signature, their kitchen table scheme to sell the orchard for $7 million, and the chilling roadside betrayal where they left me with a suitcase, demanding I surrender to Sunnyvale Estates. Harold listened, his face darkening with each revelation, his silent nods a steady drumbeat of understanding. From my purse I drew the fireproof box, its weight a quiet vow, and revealed the deed to 20 acres secured in my maiden name before Richard, and I married, safeguarding Hazelbrook's vital water rights. "This is gold," Harold said, his eyes gleaming as he studied the document. "With these rights, developers are powerless without you." The words landed like a spark, igniting my resolve to protect the orchard or life's work, our love's legacy from my children's greed. This office, with its creaking floors and shelves of legal tomes, wasn't just a meeting space. It was my command center, the deed my shield against Darren and Samantha's schemes to raise Hazelbrook for profit. This wasn't just a stand for my home, it was a universal cry for anyone whose legacy faces plunder by those meant to cherish it. Like communities wielding legal protections to fend off corporate land grabs, I stood armed with the truth of those 20 acres, the lifeblood of our orchard. Darren and Samantha thought they'd outmaneuvered me, their forged will a ticket to millions, but they underestimated the power I held and the ally I trusted in Harold. The orchard's rose, its apple-scented air, were more than land, they were Richard's and my heart, unyielding to their cold calculations. By entrusting Harold with my secret weapon, I didn't just hold my ground, I reclaimed my power, proving that Hazelbrook's soul outlasts their betrayal. In Harold Jennings' Victorian office on Main Street, he scrutinized the deed to my 20 acres, his eyes narrowing with the precision of a seasoned lawyer. "That will Darren presented. A forgery. Richard's signature was too perfect for his morphine-clouded state," he declared, his voice steady with conviction, promising a legal challenge to unravel their deceit. "Your 20 acres holding Hazelbrook's water rights block any sale without your approval." I leaned forward, my arthritic hands steady despite the storm within. "I want my home," I said softly, "and for them to see their betrayal." Harold nodded, resolute, his gaze mirroring my own determination. "Well, draft a letter to the developer, exposing the incomplete land rights." "Will they back out?" I asked, my voice calm but searching. "Smart ones would lawsuits scare them," he replied, mentioning a judge who could freeze the sale with a single ruling. I glanced out the window, where a carefree couple strolled Main Street, their laughter a stark contrast to the battle I waged for Hazelbrook orchards. "Not revenge, Harold, truth and peace," I murmured, my heart tethered to the rows of apple trees Richard and I had tended for decades. "You'll have both," he assured, his voice firm with purpose, a vow that anchored me in this war room of creaking floors and legal tomes. This wasn't just a fight for my home, it was a universal stand for anyone whose legacy faces plunder by greed. Like Indigenous leaders clutching legal titles to halt land theft, I wielded my deed as a sword, its power rooted in the orchard's lifeblood, those 20 acres Darren and Samantha underestimated. Their betrayal, the forged will, their cold plan to raise Hazelbrook for 7 million Zash ought to erase the love and labour Richard and I poured into every tree. But in Harold's office, with the deed in hand and a lawyer's resolve at my side, I wasn't just resisting, I was reclaiming, proving that Hazelbrook's heart beats stronger than their schemes. This stand, sparked by their opportunism, is a testament to the enduring power of truth, showing that legacy endures not through profit, but through the courage to fight for what matters. By noon, Harold Jennings had unleashed a legal thunderbolt, filing an injunction that froze any transfer of Hazelbrook Orchard's ownership in its tracks. A courier sped the notice to the developer, whose $7 million deal stalled the moment they learned my 20 acres, holding the orchard's sole water source, secured in my maiden name, were untouchable. Their lawyers scrambled, flooding Harold's office with calls for clarity, only to hear his steely response: "Your children misrepresented their authority." With those words, he exposed Darren and Samantha's forged will, unraveling their flawed claim to the land Richard and I had nurtured for nearly 5 decades. That evening, Samantha's text lit up my prepaid phone, frantic and pleading, "Mum, please call." Darren's panicking. We didn't know about that land. No apology, no remorse, just the raw desperation of their profit-driven scheme crumbling. I left the message unanswered, its words fading against the quiet resolve in my heart. I wasn't engaging, wasn't bending to their chaos. Darren called Harold next, his voice sharp with demands for control. But Harold redirected him to legal channels with a firmness that brooked no argument. "They misjudged you, Eleanor," Harold said later, his eyes warm with respect, as we sat in his Victorian office, the air heavy with the scent of old books and victory. "I had what they overlooked, my truth," I replied, my voice steady, rooted in the love for Hazelbrook that their greed could never uproot. This wasn't just a legal wane, it was a stand for anyone whose legacy faces plunder by those meant to cherish it. Like communities wielding ancestral titles to thwart land grabs, I held my deed as a shield, its power in those 20 acres rendering their $7 million deal impotent. Harold's office, with its creaking floors and steady presence, was my fortress. The injunction my sword against Darren and Samantha's betrayal, their frantic texts, their forged papers, their cold dismissal of me as too old to manage Hazelbrook. They underestimated the strength of a widow's love for her land. This fight, sparked by their opportunism, is a universal cry. Value lies in what endures, not what's sold. By standing firm, I didn't just protect my orchard, I reclaimed my story, proving that Hazelbrook's heart beat stronger than their greed could ever break. Hazelbrook orchards hummed with life kids pedaling bikes, dogs barking, lawns freshly mowed its simple rhythm, a shield I vowed to protect with every fibre of my being. This orchard, Richard's legacy, wasn't for sale. It was my home, my heart, my fight, and I refused to let developers bulldoze the rows we'd tended for nearly 5 decades. My resolve, quiet but ironclad, burned brighter than their greed. I left the farmhouse behind, renting a cozy apartment above the town bakery, its balcony cradling a rocking chair and pots of rosemary and thyme. Mornings bloomed with the scent of cinnamon and warm bread, a new home I claimed, not the sprawling life Richard and I once shared, but one that was wholly mine, rooted in my own terms. I returned to teaching, leading quilting nights and gardening workshops at the local library, where young farmers and retirees gathered, drawn to the history etched in my arthritic hands that carried decades of orchard care, their eager faces soaking up stories of pruning and harvest rekindled a purpose I thought I'd lost. I donated the 20 acres water rights, Hazelbrook's lifeblood, secured in my maiden name to the Hazelbrook Agricultural Cooperative, ensuring young farmers could nurture the land as Richard and I had, keeping its soul alive. The developer, faced with the unyielding truth of my deed, backed out. The forged will Darren and Samantha wielded was challenged in court, their reputations bruised as their schemes unraveled. They faded from my life, their calls unanswered, their presence as distant as their loyalty had been. This wasn't just a new chapter, it was a triumph of purpose over betrayal, a stand for anyone whose roots face plunder for profit. Like rural stewards passing traditions to new generations, I turned Hazelbrook's heart over to those who cherish it, not sell it. My balcony, with its swaying herbs and creaking rocker, became my sanctuary, a perch where I could breathe free of their greed. The cooperative wasn't just a donation, it was my legacy's heir, ensuring the orchard's spirit would endure. This story is a universal call to defend what matters, to choose peace with purpose over revenge. By building a new teaching, giving, living, I proved that truth doesn't need vengeance to thrive. It flourishes in what you nurture, in the roots you choose to sustain. Each spring, Hazelbrook orchards burst into vibrant bloom, and as I pass its rows on my walks, I smile, not with bitterness, but with a reclaimed strength that pulses through me. Darren and Samantha thought they could erase me, assuming my age and grief would bend me into surrender. They were wrong. I am Eleanor Whitmore, a woman who built a legacy with heart and calloused hands. My silence, not weakness, but a fortress of unyielding power. That moment on the desolate gravel road, abandoned with a suitcase as they drove away, should have shattered me. Instead, it forged a truth. Love doesn't demand blind loyalty, nor does motherhood require enduring betrayal. My children underestimated me. Their forged will and $7 million developer deal a cold attempt to raise the orchard Richard and I nurtured for nearly 5 decades. But in that betrayal, I rediscovered my voice, rooted deep in Hazelbrook's soil, as enduring as the apple trees we loved. The deed to those 20 acres, secured in my maiden name, was my sword, its water rights, the lifeblood that thwarted their greed. They saw me as an old widow, frail and grieving, but I was a force. My resolve forged in the quiet of our farmhouse, where memories of Richard's laughter still linger. This isn't just my victory, it's a call to anyone cast aside, their worth dismissed by those meant to cherish them. Your strength lies not in loud battles, but in standing firm, your value unshaken by others' schemes. Like communities preserving heritage against profiteers, I wielded my legacy as power, ensuring Hazelbrook's heart would endure beyond their betrayal. My name remains on the deed, my life mine again, a testament to quiet resilience that whispers louder than their greed ever could. I walk past the orchard, its blooms a defiant mirror of my own rebirth, proof that I am not what they tried to make me, erased, irrelevant, but Eleanor Grace, unbroken and thriving. To those who've been underestimated, who've found their ground against the odds, share your story below, comment, like, spread this tale. Let's lift each other up, proving that strength doesn't roar, it stands rooted and resolute in the truth of who you are.